Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoteric Nerd Podcast. I was reminded when you were talking about centering prayer of the first step in Alcoholics Anonymous.
There's actually a centering prayer program that Thomas Keating developed that works with AA as the 11th step.
Yeah, I thought they would be very compatible.
That first, that's the way of relating to your higher power.
Yeah.
The first statement, though, is that we realized our lives are unmanageable. He recommends studying the 12 steps because even if you're not an alcoholic or other addict,
they're useful.
It applies to you anyway.
Yeah. Everybody's an addict of some kind or has some kind of.
We're all addicted to our emotional programs for happiness that don't work.
Yeah, exactly. So I know a lot of people that have gone through AA have trouble with the first step. People who have a Christian background and have a positive relationship with the Christianity of their youth will have no problem with step one. Sometimes people who are, like maybe they have rejected the Christianity of their youth and moved into more of an atheistic position, they have a little more trouble. I know one person chose Mickey Mouse as their higher power. One person chose a doorknob as their higher power. And, if somebody is getting into Eastern practices or something else, then they can say Shiva is my higher power or Om is my higher power, something like that. I know you've worked a lot with Catholics. Is there something that increases the compatibility with centering prayer? That's part one of question one. And part two, is there something that inhibits or obstructs a practicing or traditional Catholic's ability to approach centering prayer?
Well, we say centering prayer is not for everybody.
But yeah, I've seen your face on the cover of Catholic magazine talking about centering prayer, so I know there's a connection there.
Yeah. Well, in my book, The Bridge Across Troubled Water, part of which was to respond to Catholic objections and misunderstandings and misrepresentations of centering prayer, I say that there's three questions the person needs to ask themselves. And if they can answer yes to all three of them, then centering prayer may be appropriate for them.
Okay.
And those questions are, first of all, do you really sincerely want to have a deeper relationship with Christ or with God or with the Spirit? The second one is, are you in reasonably good mental health?
Yeah.
In other words, are you just normally neurotic like most of us?
Right. Yeah.
Or do you have some
deeper
serious issues, psychiatric issues?
Yeah. My first student, it turned out, had some kind of form of schizophrenia, and he started evoking angels, and then he was convinced the angels wanted him to sacrifice his son, and they had to take his son away from him, and it was terrible to watch. It was painful to watch. I mean, I'm sure it was even more painful for him and for his partner, but yeah, that was what I was thinking, is opening up to a higher power and letting go of control can be a little iffy if somebody's hearing voices.
It freaks a lot of people out.
Yeah.
It freaks a lot of people out. And you see, when you do this practice, it opens you to the energies of the unconscious. So if you're not prepared to deal with that, then don't do this.
Yeah.
It's like somebody taking a psychedelic like LSD or something.
Yeah.
It's going to open you up to whatever's inside of you.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready for that, then God, don't do it.
Yeah.
Please. And then the third question is, do you feel an attraction to praying in silence without you doing anything other than consenting to God's presence and action? So if somebody can answer yes to all three of those, they want a deeper relationship, they're in reasonably good mental health, and they feel attracted to praying in silence, then try it out and see what you think.
Now,
Give it a trial run.
what if, let's say I've never met you before, and you've just told me this, and then my response is, I have a rough time with those questions because I don't know if I believe in a higher power, but I've studied Carl Jung, and I understand the importance of these symbols in my unconscious and then the collective unconscious. But when I say God, I think of, the man who used to shout from the pulpit in the place where my grandma dragged me. And when I think of Christ, I think of cheesy movies, from the 70s. But I hear that this method is good, and I want it to be good. How can I get to that place where I can surrender control when I don't believe that there is anything beyond myself? I'm a Thelemite, and I believe there is no God but man. What do I do? Should I just skip contemplative prayer? I'm not saying that this is me. I'm just saying for my audience.
The choice is up to you always. Do you believe you have a spiritual dimension, or do you believe human beings are simply intelligent animals with no spiritual component to their makeup at all? If that's the case, then
let's say I don't understand the meaning of the word spiritual. When I was young, and this is partially actually coming from me, but I'm emphasizing and pretending it's the biggest part. When I was little, I thought I understood the word spiritual. And then so I investigated and found out in all these linguistic roots it has to do with air, ruach and prana and all this. And then the more I investigated, the more I wanted to know. I got a microscope, I got a telescope, I got an encyclopedia, and I wanted to know what this spirit was. And eventually I realized it doesn't fucking exist, because every time you try to pin it down, it just moves over there, and it's slippery like a fish. And so I believe in the collective beauty of nature. I believe that the nature, Mother Nature on this earth is an extension of the cosmos, and that buried deep in the rock of an asteroid is the potential for a green earth and even something like humanity to aspire and invent something like spirituality. Can I still do contemplative prayer?
Sure, if you want to, you can try it. There's nothing that can stop you.
Yeah.
If you want to give it a try. The theory,
because it also applies to step one of AA, and a lot of people have trouble with AA because of step one. So I'm hoping we can maybe help one person.
Would you recite step one as you understand it?
Oh, it's been a few years. I accept that my life has become unmanageable and I cannot manage it myself, and so I surrender to a higher power to help me, something like that. Very, very close to that, I think.
Well, like you mentioned Jungian psychology a little earlier, a person that might be an atheist or agnostic could be a Jungian.
Yeah.
But in Jungian psychology, there's the idea of the self with a capital S.
Okay, yeah, that gets into, I mean, there maybe even is a crossover there. Maybe the Catholics might think this is getting into some territory that's a little bit heretical, but in Kabbalah, they talk about Ehyeh, which is the self of God in a sense. I am that I am. The burning bush said Ehyeh, Ashir Ehyeh, and so it's a divine name. And then there's me, ego, and so they differentiate between the lower self and the higher self. And even the higher self isn't God himself, but the higher self has direct access to God. So we lower selves. So in translating this into those terms, then centering prayer would be about opening the lower self up to the higher self.
Yes, it would be, well, it's about the healing and transformation of the personality. And that work is done by the higher self within us. And you don't need to call it God. And a lot of it is simply semantics.
Right.
The process works if you work with it and if you trust it. But in order to let go, the person has to trust.
It works if you work it.
Yeah, if you work it, it'll work you.
Yes.